Is it accurate to say that the Qing Dynasty contributed to China's lagging behind Western civilization during its reign? The answer to this question largely depends on your historical perspective. Here are some views. The 1840 perspective highlights the contradictions between Eastern and Western civilizations. The 1840 perspective is, China is the view of history most commonly expressed by mainland Chinese officials. The Qing Dynasty was a part of Eastern civilization, and the modern era of humiliation represents the consequences of Eastern civilization being struck by the industrialized Western civilization. The failure of the Qing Dynasty to modernize in time exacerbated the cultural gap, with many textbooks emphasizing the historical harm caused by the Qing government's reinforcement of absolute monarchy and isolationist policies. Exploring China's history from the 1644 perspective, we shift our focus to the contradictions between the Han Chinese and non-Han ethnic groups. Manchuria is seen as an external influence, rather than a part of Chinese civilization. According to this view, the history of humiliation endured by the Han Chinese dates back to the transition between the Ming and Qing dynasties, and it stretches into modern times. The blame for China's cultural and economic stagnation is placed on the Ming dynasty, which is believed to have triggered the decline of the Han people. The inability of the Ming dynasty to retain sovereignty eventually led to Qing colonization, followed by a series of foreign dominations by the Manchu, British, Slavs, Japanese, French, and others, resulting in a prolonged period of decline, lasting for centuries. In the 1313 perspective, we turn our attention to the year when the Yuan court designated Zhu Xi's Neo-Confucian masterpiece, 4 books and 5 classics, as the standard for the imperial civil service examination. This moment marked the official endorsement of Neo-Confucianism as the guiding ideology, which continued to influence both the Ming and Qing dynasties. The development of the 8-legged SI reached its zenith, further reinforcing the significance of the 3 principles and 5 constants in Confucian thought. State-mandated compulsory recitation of classics left no room for China's continuous ideological development and reform. In this perspective, the responsibility for this ideological stagnation is attributed to the Mongols. The 1279 perspective emphasizes that the Han people became completely enslaved under the iron hoof of an alien race for the first time, which broke their psychological taboo and lost their shame in surrendering to an alien race. As a result, even though the Ming dynasty drove away the invaders later, since the root of the distinction between the Chinese and the barbarians had been broken in the hearts of the Han people. When the Ming dynasty declined, the Han people switched to the wise ruler without any psychological barriers. This is the deep reason why the history of the late Ming and early Qing was so ugly, and why they could accept the rule of the Manchu emperor for a long time. That is, there is no China after Yaoshan. This responsibility should be borne by the Mongols or the Southern Song dynasty. The 907 perspective, or the Tianbao 14th year perspective, emphasizes that after the Anxi rebellion, especially in the Song dynasty, the ideology of the Han people, Confucianism, changed from expansion and conquest to conservatism and solidification, and stability was more important than external affairs. This made the Han people turn to a 1,000-year strategic contraction. The shameful words of Jingkang and the rule of Mongol Yuan and Manchu Qing were all the results of this ideological rigidity and contraction that caused the Han people to fall into disunity and military decline, and it continued to modern times, and even today. That responsibility should be attributed to the Tang dynasty, or the Northern Song dynasty. The 587 perspective focuses on the historical impact of the imperial examination system. Sui Wendi established 2 subjects of moral conduct, carefulness, fairness, and relief in that year, and ordered all states to contribute 3 people annually to take the scholar exam, which was the beginning of the imperial examination system. The initial difference between the imperial examination and the inspection system was not big, but it was completely established and standardized through the development of the Tang and Song dynasties. It perfectly played the historical role of destroying all soldiers in the world, and was a core component of the centralization of power and ideological control. It effectively promoted the consolidation of the ruling system, and also extinguished the soil for resistance and innovation. At the same time, as a necessary tool for governing by civil rather than military means, it eliminated the military aristocracy within the ruling class in a bloodless way after Tang, and also made the collective will of the rulers more prominent in stability rather than conquest, and aggravated the involution and stagnation of Chinese civilization. This pot should be thrown to the Sui dynasty. The BC 134 perspective focuses on the fact that the exclusive promotion of Confucianism destroyed the diversity of ancient Chinese ideology and solidified the centralization of power and the unification of the country at the legal level. The loss of cultural diversity, and diversity meant the blockade of innovation and social vitality. A unified ideology would inevitably go to a more conservative and extreme abyss. Its very favorable feature for ruling also made it difficult to break itself in the next 2,000 years. Its evil consequences became more and more obvious after the Song dynasty, until it completely fell behind. The BC 221 perspective emphasizes that Qin destroyed the classical feudal system and the contention of 100 schools of thought, and pushed Chinese history to the highly centralized Chinese Empire era, laying the historical framework for unification. Unification and centralization of power must be accompanied by the expansion of imperial power, the unification of ideology, and the destructive alternation of order and chaos. The exclusive promotion of Confucianism was the inevitable direction of unification, which caused society to be rigidly fixed at a low level of involution, and ultimately lost the ability to iterate civilization. This is the very popular theory of Qin's original sin, and Qin must bear the responsibility.